Hey, hi, hello, my name is Lydia. Welcome to my channel. I am so happy to have you here. This is a case that rivals the Jodi Arias case, partly because it involves a perpetrator who is a good-looking brunette woman, and partly because it all happened in Arizona. And Jodi Arias was still fresh in everyone's minds at the time of this case because Jodi had only been convicted the year before. And like Jodi, the defendant in this case claimed that she had killed someone in self-defense. A 2020 episode described it as the case of an ex-stripper and her sugar daddy boyfriend, also saying it was a case about a wife with a secret life. And indeed, it was a story that became a sensation. This is the case of Marissa DeVois. Marissa Suzanne DeVois was 31 years old in January of 2009. Marissa was a married mother of 3 children, and she had been married to her husband Dale Harrell for 9 years. Dale was 34 years old. Marissa and Dale lived in Gilbert, Arizona. Gilbert is a town in Maricopa County, located southeast of the city of Phoenix, within the city's metropolitan area. Dale and Marissa met as teens in their mutual hometown of Lake Havasu, Arizona. Lake Havasu straddles the border between Arizona and California, and it's about 4 hours away from the city of Phoenix. Lake Havasu can be known as a party town and a hot spot for young adults on spring break. Marissa came from a blended family and described her living situation as sometimes difficult. Dale Edward Harrell grew up in a loving family and had 1 brother and 2 sisters. One of those sisters was a twin named Mindy. Later, Mindy would share with the media the kind of person Dale was. She stated that Dale made any person who was with him the center of his world. She said Dale had a great smile, and in his younger years, he was always trying to make his friends and his family laugh. Dale and Marissa dated as teenagers and had a sexual relationship. But Marissa had a relationship with another boy as well. And when she became pregnant, she wasn't sure at first who the baby's father was. She had hoped that Dale was the father, but that was not to be. And when Dale found out about Marissa's pregnancy, the two split up and they went their separate ways. But destiny led them back to each other. Not long afterward, Dale and Marissa met up again in the city of Phoenix. By then, both were into their 20s. At that time, Marissa was working as a stripper in a club and supporting her young daughter, the baby that she had once thought that maybe could have been Dale's, and she had hoped would be Dale's baby. Marissa and Dale fell back into love with each other, and soon they were living together. Dale had been successful as he had struck out on his own in his 20s. According to what a former friend later said about the couple, at the time Marissa and Dale had met up again, Dale had just completed refrigeration school. Dale was on his way to making a good income for himself and a potential family. This former friend said that Marissa thought that Dale was a catch and a way to get a leg up in life. And this former friend knew Marissa and Dale very well, as she had lived with them while they lived in Phoenix, working as their nanny before their marriage. And one could assume that Marissa felt that this was a comfortable relationship to slip back into. She knew Dale, she knew him from her hometown, knew that he could support her and her child, and felt like she could trust him. Both Dale and Marissa were good-looking people, and they were young, and Dale accepted Marissa's daughter as if she were his own. It seemed like a relationship that one could say, and they lived happily ever after. And it did seem like that would be the case. That is, of course, until things started to sour. By 2009, the couple had added 2 more children to their family, and now they were a family of 5. Dale's twin sister Mindy would later say that she and the rest of her family had not heard much from Dale in the couple of years leading up to 2009. Mindy believed that Dale had worshipped his wife, later remarking that the phrase, "love is blind," may have applied to how Dale saw Marissa. She would also later wonder if Dale had been abused in his relationship with his wife. Marissa's former friend would later confirm that she believed that Marissa had purposefully isolated Dale from his family and friends, and all was definitely not picture perfect in their marriage. and that fact was laid bare on the night of January 14, 2009. It started with a 911 call. Making the call from the home that she shared with Dale in Gilbert, Arizona, an upset Marissa told the 911 operator, "My husband was trying to hurt me. He was trying to strangle me." And then she told the 911 operator that Dale had been hit with a hammer, hit repeatedly with a hammer. And she said that Dale was currently on their bed, bleeding from his wounds and possibly near death. When the paramedics and the police arrived on the scene at the home of Dale and Marissa, they found a lovely 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom home on a quiet suburban street. It is a home that, as of 2023, is now valued at $1.2 million. One of the first officers on the scene described Marissa as hysterical when he arrived, stating that she was on the verge of hyperventilating. They also found a bloody and disturbing scene in the couple's bedroom. It was definitely a crime scene. In that bedroom, spots of blood spattered the floor, the walls, the lamps, the furniture, and the ceiling. That amount of blood pointed to a very violent attack on Dale, who was still lying on the bed. Dale's injuries were devastating. As reports would detail later, Dale's skull had been broken in multiple places, that damage being described later as a fist-sized hole in his skull by an Arizona Republic newspaper reporter. Dale was transported to a local hospital via ambulance. He was alive, but barely. While Dale was being cared for in the hospital, Marissa was taken to the hospital as well, to be examined before being taken to the police station for questioning. To the investigators, their interview with Marissa seemed unusual. At certain points, she cried at seemingly appropriate times, looking completely distraught. Yet at other times, she smiled and laughed in an uncomfortable way that, to a detective's trained eye, appeared odd. Yes, all people react differently when faced with trauma, but Marissa's demeanor in the interview was important in how her case would be handled going forward. Initially, Marissa did not admit to the attack, stating that she had witnessed another man who had been living in their Gilbert home beat Dale with a hammer. She had initially told the police that that same man had signed a confession letter, which later turned out to be false. When confronted with all the blood evidence that pointed to Marissa as the attacker, Marissa confessed that she had done it. She had been the one to beat Dale with that hammer. And when the police asked Marissa why she had beat her husband with a hammer, Marissa proceeds to tell them that she had been abused by her husband, a story of long-term abuse that had escalated from verbal to physical abuse. She said that in the past he had beat her all over with his fists. Marissa said that Dale had wanted to have sex that night, but that she did not. She said that her husband had become angry with her, and that he had then forced her onto the bed, and holding his hands around her neck, choking her, he had forced her to have sex. Afterwards, Marissa stated that she had told Dale that, "You don't own me," and ultimately, as Dale had slept, she had struck him repeatedly with a hammer while he laid in bed, holding the hammer in both hands. As Marissa recounted the events of that night in the interrogation video, she is seen raising her arms in a motion mimicking hammer blows. And with a small smile, she said, "And I saw the hammer go into Dale's head." Inspection of Marissa's neck did note some slight red marks around her neck, but further inspection of her neck and of her body noted no bruises, no scratches, no harm at all, and no damage to her hands. Her hands remained perfect, her manicured fingernails still intact, not a chip in place. 7 days later, after the attack, Marissa DeVois was indicted on charges of attempted second-degree murder and a domestic violence offense. 2 weeks later, on February 9, 2009, Dale Harrell died. He died from a pulmonary embolism, a blood clot in his lungs, due in large part to the injuries that he had sustained during the beating he suffered from that hammer. He had never regained consciousness after the night that he had been attacked by his wife, Marissa. 2 weeks after Dale's death, the state dismissed the initial charges of attempted second-degree murder against Marissa, and instead of filing the new charge of second-degree murder, as she expected, they filed new charges of premeditated first-degree murder. The Maricopa County Prosecutor's Office indicted Marissa with first-degree murder, a Class 1 felony, stating that the crime involved the use of a deadly weapon or dangerous instrument, in particular a hammer, and the indictment alleged that Marissa intentionally and knowingly used the weapon to inflict serious injury upon Dale. The investigators believed now that this was not a case of self-defense. They believed that Marissa killed her husband with premeditation for money, for his $1 million life insurance policy. And they believed that Marissa had attacked her husband with that hammer, intending to kill him while he slept in bed. And 1 year later, in 2010, the state of Arizona filed a notice of intent to seek the death penalty against Marissa DeVois. The building of the case against Marissa took quite a while. The date of Dale's murder was January 14, 2009, but the case did not go to trial until February of 2014, 5 years after Dale's death. By then, Marissa was 36 years old. And Marissa had been out on bond all that time, all those 5 years. She had been bailed out by her boyfriend, a man who would become an important witness in her trial, a man that she had met after signing up on a sugar daddy dating website years prior to Dale's death. Yes, Marissa DeVois had been involved in a sugar daddy, sugar baby dating relationship for at least 2 years prior to her attack on her husband. Marissa met Alan Flores on the website seekingarrangement.com. At the time in 2009, the website description was, quote, "the elite sugar daddy dating site for those seeking mutually beneficial relationships and mutually beneficial arrangements," unquote. By joining the website, each party knew exactly what they were signing up for. It was known as the so-called elite sugar daddy dating website. It was plain from anyone going to the front page of the website, you were either a, quote, modern gentleman, always respectful and generous, you only live once and you want to date the best, or a, quote, goal-seeking sugar baby, someone who is attractive, intelligent, ambitious, and goal-oriented. These days, that same website is a little bit more obscure and mysterious, but it works the same way. Currently, the website is now known as Seeking.com, and its language is simpler, including the tagline, quote, "seeking possibilities," and the description, quote, "Seeking is the luxury dating site for successful and attractive singles." The breakdown between men and women on the site are that the men are labeled as successful, and the women are labeled as attractive. I guess those are now more refined terms than sugar baby and sugar daddy. Instead, you're now just either successful or attractive. According to Alan Flores, he and Marissa matched up on the seekingarrangement.com website and they began seeing each other. He said they began having sex on the very first day they met. And in return for that sexual relationship, Alan stated that he had loaned Marissa over $300,000 during the course of 2 years. And Alan had kept careful track of all those payments, detailing them on his computer. According to Alan, Marissa had told him that she intended to pay him back and return that money after an insurance payment had come in. As a personal aside, that doesn't quite make sense to me. After all, in a sugar baby, sugar daddy relationship, doesn't the man pay the woman for her companionship? I'm not necessarily sure why this was considered to be a loan, but I digress. The prosecutors pointed to this fact as being the main reason that Marissa had killed her husband Dale, to get that money, insurance money, to pay back the large amount of a loan that she owed her boyfriend. Interestingly, Alan Flores was a reluctant witness in this case. He had paid Marissa's bail money to get her released on bond, so she didn't have to sit in jail awaiting her trial. He probably didn't want to testify against her at trial, but it appeared in initial court documents that he didn't have a choice in the matter. An early court document detailed that pornography had been found on the computer seized in Allen's home, and that pornography, although mostly consisting of adult pornography, a tiny amount had included child pornography. The police admitted that it was likely that Allen had not even viewed that particular file, but it was there. So, in an immunity deal made with Allen Flores, which assured him that he would not face charges for having those particular files on his computer, he agreed to give his testimony in Marissa's trial. The testimony and evidence gathered from Allen Flores didn't end there. In addition to the money that he had said he had loaned Marissa, and which she apparently had said that she would pay back, police said that on his computer they found a journal, and that journal had indicated that he had paid Marissa a specific amount of $7,000, which she had said that she would use to hire a hitman to kill her husband. Allen also testified that Marissa had told him that she wanted either to hire someone to kill Dale or kill him herself and tell the police that he had raped her on a night after they had been drinking. And these are self-incriminating statements as well, for sure, for Allen Flores, saying that he had advanced knowledge of Marissa's plans. But Allen's immunity deal not only covered his possession of pornography, it also covered any involvement he may have had regarding insurance policy advice given to Marissa or knowledge of Marissa trying to hire a hitman and writing a false confession letter for the other man living in her home. Further, according to prosecutors, Marissa also had tried to enlist a former boyfriend to kill her husband. That man testified that Marissa wanted him to, quote, take care of Dale, although he was not entirely sure what that meant and he didn't want to have anything to do with Marissa anyway. On the other hand, on the other side of the courtroom, Marissa's defense team pointed to these following items. They raised questions about the credibility of Allen Flores, who was given a pretty sweet immunity deal in exchange for his testimony. They also pointed to his failure in reporting to the police that Marissa had allegedly claimed 3 days before the hammer attack that Dale had been killed in a tire iron beating. Marissa's defense attorneys also said that if Marissa had truly planned this attack, truly wanted to kill her husband, why had she used a hammer? Why had she not used the gun that was found in their house? And Marissa's defense team would also bring Marissa's oldest daughter to the stand. Her oldest daughter was 13 years old at the time of the attack, and 5 years later she was about 18 years old. She backed up Marissa's story that Dale, her stepdad, was violent towards her mother. She stated that, like her mother, her stepdad Dale was also involved in romantic affairs outside of the home, and that he had hit her mother. Under further questioning, the daughter did admit that her mother did hit Dale as well, although, quote, not nearly as much. She testified that her household was, quote, tumultuous, and that the abuse was never seen by the couple's friends or neighbors. The jury in Marissa's trial was comprised of 7 women and 5 men. And in the end, those 7 women and 5 men found Marissa DeVois guilty of first-degree murder. During the sentencing phase of the trial, Marissa spoke to the jury before they would make their decision whether she was to be given the death penalty or she would be given a life sentence. She apologized to the jury, saying, quote, I can't do anything more than say I'm sorry. Dale's family, my heart goes out to them. His mother and his father have had to experience the worst loss in the world.
I don't even know where to start.
With those words, Marissa DeVois began a very emotional and tearful account of the lives she ripped apart.
Our children will have to carry this for the rest of their lives, and they're going to have to carry a dual image of the dad they love that's gone and the mom they love that's responsible for that.
Dubois did her best to convince the jury. She was sorry for bludgeoning her husband to death with a hammer.
I apologize. I apologize.
Prosecutors say she did it for insurance money. Dubois claims she did it out of self-defense.
The prosecutors disputed Marissa's authenticity, however, saying that her jailhouse phone calls showed a lack of remorse. They also noted that Dale's family had wanted his remains back, and Marissa had refused to release the remains unless they had dropped their lawsuit against her, which did show her manipulation. Around that time, in that phase of the trial, Dale's twin sister also spoke to the media regarding her feelings about Marissa possibly facing a death penalty sentence. She said that if Marissa received a life sentence, she would be allowed visitors. If she was put on death row, however, she would not be allowed visitors. And Dale's sister maintained if her brother was kept from his family during life and, of course, in death, why should Marissa get to see her family while in prison? In the end, the jury spared Marissa's life and did not send her to death row. Marissa was sentenced to life in prison. 1 month later, the trial judge sentenced Marissa to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Prison records indicate that Marissa Dubois remains incarcerated at the Arizona State Prison Complex in Perryville in Maricopa County. When Marissa's former friend was asked by the media why Dale had stuck around, why he had stayed with his wife even during all the affairs and all the craziness in their house, she said that she believed that Dale stayed because he loved Marissa. She said that she had never personally witnessed Dale ever be violent towards his wife. She said that Dale had never fought back in arguments, and instead that he had often de-escalated the situation and talked Marissa down from her anger. Rest in peace, Dale Harrell. Thank you for your time in watching this video. I know that your time is valuable, and I appreciate that you spent some of it watching this story with me. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. I always love communicating about the cases that I cover, so please leave a comment. If you have a minute, please like the video, and if you haven't already, I would appreciate your subscription. I will be back to talk about another case in another week or so. And until then, everyone, you know it's rough out there, and I will be thinking of you. So until then, please take care, and I'll be thinking of you. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.